When you walk down the street and it feels really great, you know that that's a really great street. And maybe as a designer, you might be able to point out some of those things. When you walk down another street and you know it feels not that great. When you're talking about good design, you're talking about the person that you're designing it for, whether you're designing sunglasses, a house, or a city.
Fundamentally, we want to create vibrant, engaging communities where everybody can live a high quality of life, where they have access to the resources they need to be healthy, where they have access and opportunities to interact with their neighbors, and where the built environment supports healthy behaviors in the way people move through their lives on a day-to-day basis.
When I think about complete streets, when I think about a 21st century street, I don't think every mode has to win on every street, but I do think that what we are talking about is how the street functions and who the street serves. And it should absolutely be based on safety first and foremost, prioritizing and protecting the most vulnerable users of the street, and that's people biking and walking, and that it doesn't assume as its default that we're trying to move as many people as quickly as possible. Instead, it strives towards other metrics.
Realigning the mobility hierarchy of cities, from the automobile back to the pedestrian, provides an opportunity to rethink public rights of way and see them as the city's most important open spaces, as places for expanding their ecological, economic, and social functionality, and enhancing the sense of place. This video is focused on mobility and active living, specifically access.
Walkability is in high demand, and yet most of the US is not walkable. Only 30% of cities with a population of over 200,000 people would be considered walkable.
If you actually provide the infrastructure and amenities to bike safely, people definitely take advantage of it.
What we found when we looked at the crashes that were happening in Los Angeles, and every year there's between 240 and 260 people who die on our streets, half of those are people biking and walking, even though they represent a really small portion of the overall crashes. When the crashes happen, they're more likely to result in severe or fatal outcomes. It quickly became obvious that there were really strong patterns in parts of the city that suffer other negative public health outcomes, like high incidences of childhood asthma and diabetes. And they also are places that have high concentration of immigrants, high concentration of people living below the poverty line, and high concentrations of people who are dependent on transit as a lifeline service.
If you're trying to actually increase the health of the community, let's look at the built environment, figure out what's missing from that regard. We want to look at health outcomes, so mostly non-communicable diseases like chronic diseases, diabetes, heart disease, obesity, as well as the actual healthcare costs.
Most people only drive in this department. Some of them take transit, very few bike and walk. So they're always going to design from a driver's perspective. That's understandable. Engineers, so highly skilled, went to school because they're problem solvers. So if you can figure out a way to change the problem that they're solving and get them to have some empathy for all the users they're designing for, then it can be very powerful.
The data that we're collecting is known to actually impact the outcome we're trying to influence. And that data, we know, is about things that are manipulatable. You can actually change whether there's a tree, you can change the land use structure, you can change the width of the roads.
If you want to build something that lasts, people have to love it. And for people to love it, it has to be beautiful. So we cannot take a utilitarian approach or a hands-off approach to the design and beauty of the public realm.
The built environment influences how we move around, work, and engage with our communities. Designing public and private spaces to encourage more active lifestyles improves physical and mental health, increases economic activity, and expands access to everything a city has to offer.